Anu and I are going to go through a range of great discussion points today. But for me personally, this session is really special. It's not just about startups or tech, it's really about reinvention, about what it takes to step out of a career that you've spent so long building and into something completely new, unknown, but in hand, full of potential. I'm joined today by someone who's done exactly that. Anu started his career in medicine. He is a doctor, deep in the healthcare system. And like so many professionals, he started noticing the process of being employed can be done better. But instead of waiting for someone else to fix it, Anu himself decided to build the solution himself. And that's how that doctor was born, Australia's first locum doctor marketplace. We were very fortunate enough that Anu came through our Hyper Accelerate process a few years ago, which Hyper Startup Studio designed to help industry experts turn their ideas into real investable businesses. And today, he's not just a founder, he's the CEO, whilst also doing and practicing law as well, medicine, which is pretty cool. This session is really designed for anyone that might be sitting on that idea or is currently going through our process and wondering if it's too late, if they're not technical enough, or if they need that permission to take the leap. Well, this is your permission slip today. Anu's going to talk us through how the idea came to life, how we found the courage to step out of full-time medicine, and how Hyper has helped shape his vision and what he's learned in building real traction in a competitive and archaic market. Let's get into it. Anu, thanks for being here. Very excited to have you.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Excited to share my journey.
I want to take things back to the beginning to provide some context. So take me back to, I guess, life before Stat Doctor. What kind of medicine you were practicing and what were some of the frustrations that you experienced that, I guess, planted the seed for this idea?
So I'm from New Zealand, born and raised, and did my medical degree there. I came over to Australia in 2020 with a aim to become an ED or emergency medicine consultant. I did a year of ED as a second-year doctor and got severely burnt out, and so considered quitting clinical medicine altogether at that time. And then decided, I'll take a year in 2021 to travel a bit of the country, work in rural and remote Australia, and see if I can find that passion for being a doctor again. Through that journey of driving around and working in multiple different hospitals, healthcare facilities across different states, got really fed up with the processes in which were currently in place for me to find work, which was the locum agency space. So in the healthcare sector, if I'm to go work, so I am in Melbourne, if I want to go work in Sydney, the only way for me to go work there as a locum doctor or a temporary doctor is to go through a locum agency. And those locum agencies sit in the middle. They have no technology. For example, we communicate through phone calls, emails, and faxes. They charge the hospitals 20 to 30% on top of my rate. The contracts were really binding on what I could and couldn't do. And it took me all of 2021 experiencing that problem to get a bit fed up with it. And so that was life before Stat Doctor.
I love to hear these stories about where the problem has spawned from and the frustration. I guess, where did it kind of come to fruition? And that, did you have like an aha moment where you thought I could actually build something here? Like, where did it kind of take place? Do you remember it?
I do. I remember it like it was yesterday. The aha moment was actually an email I received in my inbox at the end of 2021, which was actually like I was threatened with a lawsuit by one of my locum agencies. So they had initially locaned me out to a rural Victorian hospital. I loved working there. And then I went and traveled for a bit more, and the hospital contacted me directly 7 months later, asking if I'd come work directly with the hospital. And I signed on, got really good rates and accommodation and transport covered, started working, and then found out that my locum agency contract had what's called a buyout clause or a temp to perm clause, which was a 12-month contract that I was bound to the agency, which prevented me from making any direct contractual, like making any contracts with a hospital that the agency had signed me up for within 12 months. And so what initially started out as a great relationship with this rural hospital, I was making more money, I was helping them, I was offering to work long hours without them having to pay the agency fee on top, quickly turned when the agency said, no, we need our cut. And I said, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to continue. And then they threatened me with a lawsuit. And so that was my aha moment of, you know what, I can't do this anymore. The hospital suffered, I suffered. And so I decided to do something about it.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. I mean, even going for a greater purpose, right? At the end of the day, we need more medical professionals servicing our rural areas. And the fact that an existing archaic industry and structure is preventing that from happening, is incredibly, I guess, important. That you're building this to really support those communities and get the talent out there to sort of our people, which is great. What gave you the conviction to even consider turning this problem into a business?
I would like to say that moment I decided then and there to do something about it. But like many founders, I kind of sat on the fence thinking, this is just must how it is. Everyone else suffers like this. I kind of sat there thinking, you know what, I'll just experience this and continue. And it took me about 6 months of sitting on the fence and then being like, look, there's no solution out there. If I don't try and change this, then, healthcare suffers. Taxpayer dollars go to middlemen agencies. What else can we do? And it was kind of mid the following year that I decided, what can I do? What can I do to change this? And that's when I engaged with Hyper.
Yeah, cool. And it's really interesting to understand that mindset shift. And for a lot of our founders or potential founders listening, that's the biggest thing, right? Is making that leap, the emotional, but also the practical shift. And in your from your point of view, I guess leaving medicine for tech is no small step. Really interested to see and provide some guidance and advice to those that are listening. How hard has it been to kind of begin to walk away from a very well-respected, stable profession and step into the unknown world of startups?
Extremely difficult. And even now, 2 and a bit years later, still is difficult. If I'm honest, my family and friends still don't really understand why I'm doing this. I've gone from a pretty stable 6-figure plus salary with stable career with great job satisfaction to the wonderful world of startups with a $0 salary, being told no daily, being kind of in the trenches as though I'm like a university student again. But I think what has really continued my drive is those little wins you get along the way. Like, for example, we placed our first full-time doctor into a rural hospital in February of this year. So went and locumed at the hospital. So the rural hospital that never gets full-time workers, went and locumed there through Stat Doctor. 3 days later, they were like, look, we really like you. Can we offer him a full-time contract? And I said, look, we have no contractual obligations in Stat Doctor. That was one of our, I guess, pillars of what we built the platform on. I didn't want anyone to be in the same position that I was. And within 2 weeks, he's now a full-time doctor. He's signed on for all of 2025. The hospital spends less money on locum doctors. That community is well looked after by a very well-respected, quite senior doctor. It was just a huge win. And that little glimpse has probably given me enough passion for another 2 years of struggling in the startup world. So.
That's great. It's so good to hear that purpose is the problem you're solving, and we speak about that all the time. At the end of the day, you can have a great idea, but are you willing to wake up every day with that passion to solve the problem? And which is great. And I guess that identity shift, going from a clinician to being an entrepreneur, how's it been for you? I see that you've been quite active on LinkedIn, but how's it been?
I think particularly in the clinical space, it's really difficult because being a clinician is such a well-respected, safe, stable career. And even throughout whatever university degree you go through, or healthcare is all about risk averseness, being empathetic, listening, not going outside your scope. And startup world is the complete opposite. So more than just in other specialties or in other transitions, I think healthcare entrepreneurship is much harder. And that's why we see so few clinical entrepreneurs. And so one of the things I've tried to make my passion is to try and encourage others to take the leap and to realize, you always have a stable career to fall back on. If things don't work out, it becomes an exciting story for a year or two in which you did try and solve a problem that, maybe doesn't work, but the learnings you make in this position are just so immense that you can always fall back and still continue what was before. But if you don't take that leap, then you don't get a chance to solve real big problems.
That's great. There's obviously the risk, but the reward side, I'm sure there's been such, intrinsic, great win as well, as you highlight. I want to talk about going back to that early point. So you had the idea and enter Hyper. As I said earlier, incredibly grateful that we had the opportunity to work with you through this. How did you, I guess, discover Hyper, and what did make you feel like it was the right path or place to support you whilst you're working full time to bring that doctor to life?
From my perspective, medicine was all I knew. So I was a very well-trained doctor at the time. I was a very good doctor, but a terrible business person. I knew nothing about startups, nothing about business, nothing about marketing, sales, anything. And so I wanted someone to partner with that would really be able to not just help me do that, but teach me how to do that as well. And through my investigations, and I'm a pretty thorough person, I researched quite a few different things that I could kind of join with. And Hyper definitely gave me the confidence to be like, we won't just help you get there, we'll teach you how to continue from when you leave us. And that was something that was really important to me. And the foundations and fundamentals I learned throughout the Hyper program, I continue to put in place today. And then I will also say, and I can see Ursula's on here, who was my project manager. So thanks, hi Ursula. But a lot of the wireframes and design elements and everything that I got out of Hyper, I still get comments on today. So the quality as well as the learnings were so spectacular that I get people coming up to me saying, look, your phone app runs really well, it looks really good. Who did your design work? Did you hire a professional designer, etc.? And I said, well, I lent on the team at Hyper.
I guess from our point of view, really an example of you getting what you put out as well, and obviously working with the team and your investment into the building phase as well. Fantastic. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment regarding, some of that advice that allow you to actually move forward to the next space. But I guess for those listening too, like what surprised you most about the startup building process? Maybe if we even talk about that accelerate process, what did you think it would be like versus what it actually was? And did we was there anything that was kind of uncovered that was a big surprise for you?
I was really nervous about joining Hyper in that I had no foundational knowledge. I was concerned that you would expect someone to have an MBA, to have a business, to have anything. All I really had was a problem and I wanted help building a solution. I didn't really have a great idea of how to format that solution, how to structure it, the legal implications, the business implications. I didn't know anything. I was just a doctor who hated what I was kind of put to by locum agencies, and I said I needed help. So I was really pleasantly surprised that Hyper helped me from almost ground zero. I'll probably say ground -1. I came in with literally no knowledge about business structures, business development, websites, anything. And I was really excited to work with some pretty amazing people at the Hyper team to grow that knowledge from zero. And I don't feel like, and I haven't done any other education outside of what I've learned at Hyper. I haven't gone and done an MBA or anything. And the foundations and kind of the ongoing learning that I've had built on top of that has put me in good stead.
Yeah, great. I guess going back to that as well, Arno, part of what we want to do through that accelerate process is be able to take this concept and be able to go out there and demonstrate some early traction for a couple of reasons. A, to give you the confidence as a founder that this idea that I'm building is actually something that the market is receptive and wants. And also allows us to then potentially move forward to raising investment or alternatively creating key partnerships. So when you do one day launch, or when a startup does launch, there's the opportunity to have, I guess, an easier distribution to customers. So I want to talk about traction and what you were able to do early on. What were some of the first steps that you actually did and took to validate that doctor and prove there was actually demand for what you were building?
I think in the first meeting that I had with Hyper, once I'd kind of joined the Accelerator program, is I had all these assumptions that is what I thought the solution needed to look like. And I was really excited that I was just pushed back so much by Hyper in a really good way. to question my own assumptions, to think, it's a really good idea to build a product that meets your needs, but in reality, you need to meet customers' needs as a whole. And so going back to the drawing board and saying, is the problems that I'm facing the same problem that all other locum doctors are facing? Is the problem I'm facing the same as what hospitals and healthcare facilities are facing? And can I prove that? Was really valuable. And so we spent a good 2-3 weeks doing market research and proving that essentially a lot of my assumptions were wrong. I thought the problem was in purely just the locum agency and purely just price. But a lot of the aspects that came back to us, particularly from the hospital and healthcare facility side of our two-sided marketplace, was actually around security. They wouldn't use our platform unless we could prove that the credentialing and security of our doctors was at the same standard as a locum agency, which is not anything I had ever considered. And I was really glad to have got that proof then, so that when I went and put money into developing, into building, we could actually integrate that, because that is a huge part of what we are doing. And so one thing I always tell early stage founders is, if you can, do the research up front, and also when you're trying to build your early stage product or your MVP or the first trial, build it with your customers, as opposed to assuming what your customers want and asking them afterwards. And so we're doing a version 2 of our build in June, and we have 4 large public health networks from the Northern Territory and Western Australia who are on the team that are helping us build it. And so that way we guarantee that, 1, they're going to build something that they want, and 2, they're going to be permanent users of our product forever. So that's one thing I think that has been something that was taught to me that I never really considered. That's been really valuable.
Yeah, that's great. It's so important to understand that willingness to pay and building with the customers so that you get that product market fit. How did you kind of go about that, Arno? I recall that you went to a few trade shows, you kind of put yourself out there, hit up some social media groups. Like, talk us through some of the strategies that those listening can take and implement themselves.
I was not a very big, open, outspoken person early on, and I was quite nervous about putting myself out there and putting my idea out there. But I was encouraged quite heavily that, if you are going to start a startup and get into the business world, people need to know who you are. And no one is going to buy from someone they don't know. And no one is going to kind of engage with any surveys you do or anything unless you can kind of prove what you're trying to build. So I really had to put myself out there. It was a huge step for me, but I've only grown, and now I do podcasts and I'm on social media almost daily, putting myself out there to try and get more traction. The things that worked really well for me was in my market research, and I just talked to as many doctors, friends, anyone I could talk to, and as many hospitals as anyone I could talk to. I initially started talking to them saying, hey, this is my problem, here's my solution, would you buy? And that was the wrong approach. What I wish I had done, and what I ended up doing later on, was, what are your problems? And just be really open-ended and see if their problems match with what you think is a problem. And then say, if you could build a solution, what would you like to see? And see if their solution matches with your solution. Because I had a lot of people who just agreed with me. They were my friends, they were my colleagues. I was a doctor, they wanted to appease me maybe. And they said, yes, great idea. Yeah, great, I'll pay for it. But the problem was that didn't really give me any help, or didn't really target me. It just kind of met my assumptions instead of questioning them. But in the later stages, and I think it was one of my project managers kind of said to me, just try doing this slightly differently. And I approached a healthcare facility and said, hey, I'm a doctor. What are your problems with locum agencies? And then they laid it out. And then I said, actually, we're not solving your problems that you have with locum agencies. And that was huge for us. So that just little bit of advice turned what we built now to what it could have been, which probably wouldn't have done as well as it has.
Yeah, it's good advice. I think Stuart, one of our product managers, just commented there as well, and just said it's so important to ask what their problem is, not what you just think of the solution, right? And there's so many different ways and features you can go into, but we need to understand, because the willingness to pay comes off a problem being solved, which is great. Going back to the aha moments, was there a single moment that you might recall, like a potential partnership or a big hospital or someone that said, yes, I love this, that was just like, wow, this is actually something tangible that I can see that's going to work?
Yes, there's probably 2. The first one was a partnership that we got. So really early on, and Hyper was teaching you this, you want to find a partner who is not a competitor but has a similar group of people they're trying to engage that you're trying to engage as well, and can you form a partnership? And ideally they're a company bigger than yours. Our earliest partner was a company called Henry. They're a huge financial platform for sole traders, and locum doctors are sole traders. And I was lucky that because I'm from New Zealand, the founder of Henry's from New Zealand. They raised 35 million at the start of last year in a Series B fund to move to Australia. They're moving to the UK as well. And I sent this guy a message who was the founder of this multi-million-dollar company, and I had nothing. And I said, hey, I'm from New Zealand. You're from New Zealand. I'm hoping to build a product for locum doctors. Would that be something of interest for you? He messaged me literally 10 minutes later saying, yeah, let's set up a call tomorrow. And that was huge for us because everywhere across internet, across social media, I put Stat Doctor is now partnering with Henry. And so all these people who knew Henry was like, oh, Stat Doctor, what the hell is that thing? We had nothing. And so that was one huge moment for us where that partnership was huge.
I vividly remember that. It was amazing.
Yeah, I don't know how it happened. And it's just one of those things where, you don't get what you don't ask for. And I've used that to just be like, now I go, hey, we're partnered with Henry. Can we partner with you? And we've got all of these CPD platforms, medical education platforms who are like, oh, Henry's partnered with Stat Doctor. There must be some huge, amazing company. And we certainly are not. But you can kind of it just flows on. You just need one person to believe in you. And I was lucky to have that New Zealand connection, maybe. I don't know. He was just a nice guy. And then the second, I think, big aha moment was maybe a month ago. The Northern Territory Primary Health Network, which is 31 GP clinics across the Northern Territory, reached out to me. I'd done no marketing to them. We've solely focused in the Victorian area. We haven't really left Victoria much with what we were offering. And the CEO of the Northern Territory Primary Health Network says, look, we spend $20 million a year on locum agencies. Tender and contracts are running out at the end of this year. Would you kind of form a deal with us? And then they said, how much does it cost? And I didn't know. I had no pricing. We're a cost per shift model. We hadn't thought about like a B2B SaaS platform that much. And he basically said, how much are you going to be? And so that was another huge aha moment where they were like, look, we have all of this money we're wasting. Can you reduce that money? What can you bring to us? And so they're one of our primary partners at the moment, building version 2.0 with them.
So exciting, Arno, and mate, congratulations to hear that. I was just reflecting then what you spoke about, a word you spoke about earlier that Maxine Minter spoke, who's one of our venture capital partners. I did a webinar with her about the biggest asset a founder can have is grit. And I think that, you have every single element of grit to persevere and persist through the ups and downs to be able to win. It's fantastic. And I think we were speaking offline before, but how many clinics have you got now signed up for your pilot in total?
So we're about to have 100. So we're in a beta trial at the moment that ends at the end of June. We have 20 hospitals and clinics and about 110 doctors. And we've intentionally kept it small. We have so many people knocking on our door being like, hey, we want more. But we just wanted to prove that our product fit what was correct before we launched large. And coming on July 1st, when we do our formal release, we'll have over 100 clinics on the platform, which is quite exciting.
Wow, right. And congratulations. And you spoke earlier about how you've gone from someone that was relatively quiet, prior to starting in terms of your voice out there in the market, to now someone that's on podcasts and putting yourself out there. Speak a lot around founder-led businesses, right? At the end of the day, it's about you utilizing yourself as a founder in order to be able to go out there and, raise some awareness. How's that gone in terms of the podcast and being able to then open doors to some of the other accelerators you're doing? What kind of tentacles have grown from you just putting yourself out there that you could advise other founders listening to give it a go?
So many tentacles, like so many I couldn't even name, just through LinkedIn alone, which is where I do most of my efforts. It's about trying to find your niche and what you know about, and then trying to talk about it. And I did a talk recently at one of the large medical schools here in Melbourne about entrepreneurship for clinicians. And a lot of them said, look, we're med students, we don't know what to talk about. And I said, you don't have to be an expert to talk on LinkedIn or to talk on social media. You can talk about problems. You can talk about yourself. You don't have to talk about, hey, this is the solution to world hunger or world peace. You don't have to be, I'm the best cardiologist who's ever existed. You just need to talk about problems and get people interested in the problem that you're trying to solve. And if you can do that early enough in your journey, by the time you come up with a solution, you already have a wait list of people who understand, know about your problem, and know what you're caring about. So one of the things I always try and tell founders is I wish I'd put myself out there sooner. I wish I put myself out there when I was 18 and first got a LinkedIn, but I didn't. I sat and watched other people until I was 29 or 30. But if you can put yourself out there daily, weekly, engage with people, talk about problems, people get interested in you. Some of the best businesses are not created at the time they post on LinkedIn. They're created months, weeks, years before. So one of the things we're launching is we're moving from Stat Doctor and we're building a secondary company called Stat Nurse. And so that has kind of just come into fruition. I guess this is the announcement. We're launching that on the 1st of January next year. And one of the things we've done is we've partnered with 2 nurses who are quite large in the sector to be able to use our tech to grow and scale that. And what we're doing you'll see me all over from 1st of June, we've got this big Stat Nurse promotion where we're going to try and have 1,000 nurses already on our wait list before we launch in January. Whereas when I started Stat Doctor, we had 0 doctors. And so I'm trying to build a wait list while also running a platform. You don't have to have anything. So there's lots of founders on here who are listening who may not have products, may not have ideas, or are early on the stage of being through the accelerator program. It's great to be posting on Apollo regularly, but you also need to be trying to find where are your customer base, who is going to be using you, and how can you get them engaged and interested in both yourself as a founder and your problem.
And congratulations on the announcement of Stat Nurse. That's exciting. I didn't know that, so for you, but I couldn't agree more. It's about finding your tribe early on, finding your tribe of those people that either love the problem that you're solving, or hate the problem that you're solving, so they're willing to pay for it to be solved. So that's super important. And I agree as well, being able to find and partner with other people that have a brand or a voice out there like these 2 nurses and generate, a wait list of people that are willing to pay. And as soon as it goes live, a lot of those early customer efforts are already solved, is a great thing to be doing early on. So well done on that. I'm excited to see it launch.
Thank you.
Going back to our founders here, and some of those that are kind of still sitting on the fence of what you spoke about, I guess, what is some of the top line advice that you do have for someone that might be stuck in their career? It doesn't excite them. They've thought about this concept, but they are scared to make that leap. What's a bit of a mindset that you've evoked in order to be able to help you through that?
I think the first thing is, whatever you're building, whatever your idea, don't be afraid to tell people about it. I think too many people think that someone else is going to steal their idea, so they keep it closed off. And we did that for about a year with Stat Doctor. We didn't tell anyone because we were like, oh, someone else might build a marketplace. In reality, unless you have something deep tech that's super proprietary that you have a patent for, everything else is copyable and not that unique. And I'm sorry to tell you that that's just a fact. But the product is only one part of your business. The passion you have, the founder you are, the team you build, the customers you get are so much more important than the product. We're not the first locum doctor marketplace in Australia. We're actually not the first in Melbourne. There were 2 before me in Melbourne who one turned into a locum agency and one went under. So we had nothing proprietary, nothing new. What I wish I had done more is just talk to people. If you're getting enough validation back, then you're ready to take the leap. And also, don't just talk to people in your inner circle. You need to find a way to talk to people who don't know you, ideally people who don't like you, who will tell you the truth about what you're building or what your problems are and whether they have the same problems. So I think it's called the Mum Test. It's a really good book I'd recommend people read, which is essentially like, you can ask your mum anything. I can tell my mum, I'm going to jump off a bridge today, and she'll probably support me. Because, mums do that. They're just always supportive. But what you want to do is find a way to find people who are outside your network so far that they will give you honest feedback about what you're building. And that's what's so hard about that kind of market research aspect. And that's why someone like Hyper is really good, because you can jump on Apollo And realistically, you have 6,000 people who don't know you, who don't care about you, and will give you honest feedback. And that's one step. And then you go, okay, maybe this has got legs. And then you go out further and say, let's say again, you're in the healthcare space, because that's what I know, and you're wanting to do with allied health, call people. We called 50 hospitals around Victoria and then called a few in Western Australia. Do they have the same problems in Western Australia as they do have in Victoria? People are happy to take a call if you are genuine and honest and think that you're going to help them in some way. And then I think there's no real good time to take the leap. Like, if you do end up taking the leap, you'll regret not taking the leap earlier, no matter what you are. So what do they say? Like, the best time to invest in the stock market is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's the same. It's the same with being a founder. If you're on the fence, take a leap, get started, see what happens. What's the worst case scenario? It's a year of learning. It's a year of excitement. It's quite fun. You'll learn so many amazing things about yourself. You can still work your day job. I worked as a doctor full-time whilst doing all of the hyper programs. I worked as a doctor full-time, even building the early stages. I've only moved out to doing part-time locum work this year to go full-time into stat doctor. So I did 2 years of just doing it in my spare hours, weekends, evenings. So you don't have to change your life that drastically. But if you have a big enough why, it's worth it.
Fantastic advice. I love it. The mum test is certainly important to be able to go out there and speak to people that you don't know to get that brutal, honest feedback that's only going to help grow the platform. And I love the notion around telling people, as you articulated, so actually going out there and not hiding it, because, yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, ideas are copyable, but distribution, passion to actually take it to the next stage is what sets every company apart, which is fantastic. So much great advice, and so appreciative for your time today, Anu, as well. And I guess, what's next for Stat Doctor? When are you kind of getting closer to launching these trials, and how can people get involved and follow you along the journey after today?
Yeah, always happy to talk startups. I do a bit of mentorship now in the clinical entrepreneur space. So if anyone's, healthcare, I see Esther here as a nurse. I love trying to encourage clinicians. Healthcare is what I know, but I've learned a lot about startups through programs like Hyper. Next is July 1st is our official launch, where we go kind of national out of Victoria. We'll have 100 clinics and ideally 1,000 doctors by the July 1st launch. We have a big build coming up in June to meet that launch date. And then, as I said, Stat Nurse coming out in January the 1st. And then we're tackling all of healthcare. So we'll build a Stat Allied Health, a stat radiographer, stat vet, etc. In due time. Oh, and people can reach me on LinkedIn. Like my posts, that'd be
great. Yes, he's a great thought leader on LinkedIn. I just want to thank you again for your time. Thank you to all those that opportunity to tune in your lunch time. Really appreciate it. Wish you all the best with Stat Doctor, and everything else in between.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.